Hello, I'm Jill Kennedy. I'm a textile artist and I've been painting on silk and teaching textile art for over 30 years. Now, a lot of you who've gone out and bought this DVD, you may be returning to art after a long break, you might be wanting a new hobby, or perhaps you're coming to art for the first time. Silk painting is the ideal activity for you because you can start small and do a tiny card to start with once you've learnt the technique, or a small picture, and then as you get more experience you can make cushions, you can make scarves, give them away to all your friends, you can make jewellery, you can get larger and do large pictures and wall hangings, and you can even paint 3 and 4 metre lengths of silk and make your own clothes, and then you will never go out and find someone wearing the same dress as you. First I'm going to show you all the silks and the dyes and how you get set up for your silk painting. The finest silk has got a nice even weave, and this is what you will need for if you're a beginner especially, because the smoothness of the silk allows for very even painting, and that's a Pongé 5, which is a very thin one, or a thicker one, which is a Pongé 8, which is, I use this a lot, especially when I'm teaching and in my own work. You can have a nice thin chiffon, great for scarves, harder to paint on though. A satin crepe de chine, which is beautiful, quite expensive, but very nice for painting as it is even and it drapes very well because it has a twisted weave. And finally, on my table here I have a twill which has a diagonal weave and is very nice for ties and cushions and furnishings. This is just 5 here. There are hundreds of different silks, so as you get more experience you will try the different types. The silk needs to go onto a frame because you can't paint your silk on the table, it would all smudge. So I use wooden frames. Lots of silk painters have their own version of setting up, and some you will find use plastic frames, but I've always used wooden frames and I really like just making my own frames to fit my projects. So if I'm painting a 90 by 90 scarf, I have a wooden frame like this which is 90 by 90 centimetres. These slot frames are very handy because you can make them, especially if you're a beginner, you only need one of these and you can make them to any size you want. If you want a cushion, you make them this size. If you're just making a tiny greetings card, you can make it whatever size you want it to be. So they're very handy for beginners. Then you have to cut your silk and put it onto your frame. There are some wonderful pins out on the market, and these have got 3 tiny prongs in them so they don't rip or puncture your silk. You can use push pins if you're not going to want the edge of your silk, but if you're painting big scarves that are ready hemmed especially, you don't want horrible marks around the end, so these pins are great. Don't be frightened of your silk. The silk is very, very strong. Even the thin silks are very strong. So you want to cut your silk now to fit onto your frame. So just cut the edge with a little snip and then always rip it. Don't try and cut it. You won't cut it straight. So just rip your silk and it'll rip in a straight line for you. You always get these bits hanging off. You can just pull those off, and then pull it as tight as you can onto the frame. You want it to be tight like a drum, not all baggy because you won't be able to paint very well. So when I'm framing up, I take one corner, and if there's a selvage edge, that's good because that's going to be really straight. So just pull that as tight as you can along your frame. They're quite difficult to put in sometimes, these pins, but in the pin box you get a little tool for actually pulling them out, so that's quite easy at the end. So don't worry about how many pins you put in. If you're finding it difficult getting it nice and tight, just put more pins in. They stick together in the box, so you have to separate them out. Now, when you're pulling your pins, don't put one pin opposite the other because you'll get a tension line here. So just come every other one, still pulling tight, every other pin. When you start painting, sometimes your silk goes a bit baggy because it's wet, obviously. There's no harm in just re-stretching it. You can just take the pins out and pull it tighter. There you go. Now, if you look at that, if I hold it up for you, it's tight like a drum, and that's how you need it to be to start your silk painting. So that's the silk and the frames and the pins. And the major thing and the most important thing are the dyes. When you go into your fabric store or your suppliers or your craft shop, wherever you're going to buy your equipment, there's lots of mail order companies where you can get all these goods. You will find that there are two brands. There are paints and there are dyes. And this is a huge, very, very important thing because they are completely different. And the techniques I'm going to show you today work very well with dyes. Some of them work very well with paints, but not all of them. And I will be telling you at the beginning of each section which ones work with paints and which ones work with dyes. Beginners mainly start with paints. They are so easy, they're so bright, they are easy to fix into your fabric because all you have to do is iron them. The dyes are gorgeous, they are vibrant, they are the best dyes you can buy, and you have to steam fix them in, which is a little more difficult, but I will show you how to do that as well. I just want to show you the difference between the two. You can probably already see, if I put them side by side here, the difference in them already, because look at the paints. These are sort of almost like let down acrylic. They're very, very fine paint that is specially adapted for silk. And they are very bright and they are opaque. You can see how different they are from the dyes, which are in this palette, which look like ink. They are transparent. And when you put these onto the fabric and dry them, you iron them on the back and you basically stick them onto the fabric. And I'm going to show you now the difference between the two because you need to decide at the beginning which ones you are going to go for. So on this side, I'm going to put the paints, and on that side I'm going to put the dyes just to show you the difference. Okay, nice, they're lovely and bright. They blend into each other very well. And actually, if I dried that now and tried to put some blue on top of my yellow, the blue would come out blue. However, that's the paints, this is the dyes. Okay, I've got some yellow on my brush there, which is coming on. You can already see the difference in these. When they're fixed, they come up so vibrant. Now I'm just going to dry this with a hairdryer because then I can show you the difference. Okay, I've dried that with the hairdryer and they're both dry now, and I just want to show you what will happen if I try and put some clean water on this. The heat of the hairdryer has almost fixed this into the fabric. I have to iron it on the back. When I take it off the frame, I'll iron it on the back for 3 minutes and that will be fixed. You can then put it in your washing machine. But this one is not fixed. This is not fixed in here until you've steamed it. So it's great because you can do all these wonderful things with it now. Just watch what happens. It's not fixed, so it will move. So if I put water on here, if I put any variety of products like salt or sugar, with all these techniques I'm going to show you later, you're able to do with the dye. That has moved, because it's not fixed, it's moved to the edge of the water. Now that same thing will not happen with the paint. It just doesn't work as well. So for all the techniques we're using today, you can do it with paint. You can try them all with paint. They work a little bit, but they just don't work as well as the dyes. So I just wanted to clear that up at the beginning before you start buying all your products. I'm going to be showing you 8 techniques to use in your silk painting, and what with the luxurious silks, these amazing dyes with this vibrant colour, soon you'll be able to produce your own unique silk paintings.